Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome in. We'll get started momentarily, and for the while, you can enjoy the song. It's from a playlist called Big Desk Energy. If you want to look that up on Spotify, truly great vibes. All right. I'm gonna pause that so I'm not yelling over the music at you all. Welcome. So excited for our conversation today on everything future of media. If you can, please turn on your cameras. I'm sure myself and all of our panelists would love to see your faces. And as always, if this is your first time at a Learning at Morning Brew event, we love an active chat. So show a lot of energy in the chat to our panelists, to our moderator, makes them know that they're doing a good job and are not missing the mark. So we love it when you use Zoom reactions and whatnot. Before we get started, I just want to introduce Learning at Morning Brew. We are the educational arm from Morning Brew, the media company, and we do a series of cohort-based courses for top performing professionals to level up and accelerate their careers. We also have sprints on different tools and skill sets that you can sharpen along the way. So definitely check us out if you're interested, learning.morningbrew.com. And for now, I'm so excited for our conversation today. Our panelists are our alumni of our programs, and they are the best of the best and doing awesome things in their respective industries. So really excited to hear from them today. And of course, our conversation is going to be moderated by the one and only Maddie Merritt, our daily writer here at Morning Brew, as well as a comedian. She's amazing. So I cannot wait for the conversation that she will moderate. So without further ado, Maddie, take it away.
Hi, guys. It's me, Maddie, from beautiful Chicago, Illinois. So today we're going to talk about the future of media, and I have a super sick lineup on the panel. First up, we have Brennan Woodruff, co-founder and COO of GoCharlie.ai. We've got Campbell Rollins, director of commercial strategy at Politico, and Sarah Clayton Lee, co-founder of Big 7 Media. So in case you guys don't know those titles that I just said, I'm going to pass it to our panelists to give you a little info about what they actually do. And they're going to tell you a fun fact because Brendan was begging to tell a fun fact. So I'll pass it to Brendan first.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. So I have to plug the Learning Brew program. It's actually what ultimately pushed me to quit my job at SoftBank and pursue entrepreneurship full time. So you guys are awesome. Kyle, especially shout out to you for helping connect me with the right people. But basically at GoCharlie, I do anything that's not coding. So apologies for those that are MBA Slack members. You get to hear from me a little bit more with cringy dad jokes, but I'm basically the business guy. And my fun fact is effectively, I am writing the sequel to 27 Dresses with Katherine Heigl, and that I have been in 35 weddings. So 35 touches coming to a movie theater near you in 2024. We're going to use Charlie to write the screenplay. So there you go.
I love that. That is a good fun fact. I'm glad that you begged to share with us. Campbell?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. So I work in commercial strategy at Politico. And essentially we're, the go-to-market team for the consumer side of our business. So I focus a lot of my time just figuring out how to best monetize our content, launching new products, and then really just focusing on the growth strategy for the company. Before this role, I worked in brand content and content marketing at Politico and some agencies across DC. Brennan put me on the spot with a fun fact here. So I have one, and it's kind of gross, but I almost bit off my tongue completely in a skiing accident like 6 years ago.
That's really metal. That's awesome, Campbell. That's a great fun fact.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah.
Hi. Yeah, it's kind of hard to follow up with those fun facts, but I'll try to think of it. So I'm Sarah. I'm the co-founder of Big 7 Media, which is a travel media company. Before I founded that 4 years ago, I worked as a journalist for news radio stations and a lifestyle media brand in Ireland. And now with Big 7, we were acquired by a UK travel company in November 2020. So I've been leading the kind of content and marketing team since then. Thank you, Brennan, for the claps. But in the last 6 months, I have moved over more so into the parent company and work for a biz dev with them. And the only fun fact I can think of is that I'm in Vietnam right now, where I live, and it's midnight. And I do in fact have pajama bottoms on underneath the getup. So
Yeah.
there we go.
That's an awesome fun fact. This was a great collection of fun facts. I was telling everyone earlier that my fun fact is always that I've been hit by a car, and that is not even close to the cool stuff you guys said. But enough about me getting hit by a car. Let's talk about the future of media. So I would love to know, how would you guys each describe the current media industry right now in one sentence or less?
I can jump in. I'll go one word, and fragmented.
I'm going to go to the TikTokification of everything.
I'm going to go with like getting more diverse and increasingly socially driven, but a little bit unstable.
Okay. All right. Does anybody want to elaborate a little bit?
Sure. I think for me, what I mean by the TikTokification of everything is media used to be this thing where you could only be found if you had a great email list, or you had a great set of followers, or you had already built a brand. And so TikTok has kind of turned all of that on its head and allowed for anyone to become a viral sensation. And social media, I think, did that before, but the algorithm was driven based off of people that followed you or had similar interests. And now TikTok has unlocked this thing where you could literally go from no one knowing who you are to an overnight success, and then build a brand around that fame. So I think that's where the transition is coming, and that enables the creator economy, which we'll get into. But that's kind of my perspective on media at the moment.
Yeah, and what I mean by fragmented is really like media today is really disrupted, and the scale era is over, I think. I don't think we're ever going to see brands like BuzzFeed or the Huffington Post, Vice, Vox, those type of kind of like scale media brands from the early, the kind of Facebook era launch ever again. And I think the new era of media today is really all about like niche media. It's news and information on niche topics for smaller, hyper engaged audiences. And that could take the form of a creator or a company. But the most successful companies find audiences who really rely on that news and information to do their jobs. And that allows for better, more sustainable businesses. So I think it's fragmented, it's disjointed, but it's also niche.
Ooh, good point. Sarah, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting that both the guys mentioned, like Brennan with the TikTokification, and then Campbell with the, as you said, like hyper kind of engaged smaller audience. It's getting a lot more niche. And I think that's kind of what I was getting at a little bit as well, with like it. I feel like it is getting more diverse, and kind of more community news. I know even like a lot of Irish kind of media that I would still follow are doing a lot more kind of in-depth community pieces, but then they don't have any money to kind of really get it there. And as we're talking about like the kind of that scale, so yeah, it's difficult to really see what's going to come out on top.
Cool. So are there any trends that you guys are seeing right now that you hope stick around?
I'll jump in. I think I've noticed a lot more kind of like community funded media, either like via crowdsourcing, or in some cases maybe like small government funds to kind of fund certain projects. I think that's really cool to see. And I've also noticed a lot kind of more transparency around kind of revenue, and especially salaries within journalists and within the media industry. And I know when I was starting out, I would have no idea how much I should or could be making. Whereas now I've seen a lot of people kind of sharing lists and just being more transparent around that. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think, or go ahead, Brennan.
No, I was going to say, Campbell, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think like this concept of like active media, there's a great media thinker, writer, podcaster, Brian Morrissey. He calls it primary engagement media, but it's basically the idea of like people actively subscribing to or visiting your content. So it's content that's not optimized for algorithms or SEO, but it's like written for a community, which Sarah gets to your point earlier, but that that community really relies on that content to do their job. So it becomes part of their identity. It becomes part of their routine. And I think just, the media brands that are going to succeed in this next era are going to be the ones that kind of can claim that loyal, engaged audience, and that are more like active consumers of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll take, I have a lot of different ways I want to answer this question, but I think a trend that I'd like to continue would be people starting to question the things that they read a little bit more critically. I think we've lived in this era where people have, seen information and taken it at face value and not really questioned it. And for better or for worse, I think the last couple of years have caused everybody to start to question what they read. What that has birthed is subject matter experts, literally scientists that work on things their whole life, are now becoming content creators, are now starting to educate the world. And the tools to turn their knowledge into usable, understandable content, I think that's a trend I would really love to see, because when you have fact-based content and media coming out, I think the world in general hopefully moves in a better direction. Now, what is fact is a question that comes up, but that's a trend I'm starting to see, is that people are creating a business around their expertise. And I think that's starting to power the media trends of the future.
Yeah, I totally believe it. My TikTok is all experts going, that's actually not true, to like popular things, and me going, okay, cool. You're right. You're the expert. Opposite of that, what are some trends that you hope do not stick around in media? I don't want to make you roast anything right now, but
yeah, like you should go first.
Safe space for roasting.
Yeah, I kind of want to like bounce back on what Brennan just said. So I think that that sort of everyone's an expert, or like that you can be an expert mentality is really good in certain spaces like B2B or more like interest. But when you're talking about hard-hitting journalism, whether it's on politics, which is obviously what I'm kind of concerned with in my role, but also like economics, like more rigorously reported news, the whole creator economy shift and sort of everyone is an expert doesn't necessarily work. And so I think that trend of like journalists breaking off to do their own newsletter, like you're not getting that support that an institution, these big media brands, whether it's fact checking, editing, legal support, are offering. So I do worry a little bit about that sort of mentality or shift in the future when it comes to like journalism with a capital J, if that makes sense.
I love that. I love that. I think I'll just hop in here. News outlets becoming media outlets is a trend that I would like to see stop. I don't want to get clickbaity articles from the Wall Street Journal. I don't want to get clickbaity articles from Bloomberg about some virus that just got unearthed in Antarctica under a glacier. I go to them for news and fact-based content, not, trying to sell me on one way or another. And that's not to say that there's not a place for that, because I definitely love opinionated articles. I love fresh takes. I love differing points of view. But I think when news becomes media, your trust in institutions can kind of go out the window.
I think like a trend, and this kind of ties in with what Campbell is saying about everyone being experts, is just like true crime for podcasts, for TikToks. I'm like, just get rid of it. It's people unearthing new evidence. I just think it's so exploitive, and I don't know. Luckily it doesn't really come up on my algorithm, obviously, because I hate it. But yeah, anytime I see anything about that, I'm just like, let it go. You're not gonna solve the case. Just get over it. Find something new to talk to. Like, yeah, I can't.
So should I was going to say, should I not be staying up on Reddit every time I watch a documentary till like 4 a.m. trying to solve the case?
Were the minions actually really inspired by a group of kids that were kidnapped in some random country? I don't know.
I mean,
find out.
I'm allergic to it. Yeah, I really can't.
I can't watch another 17-part Netflix documentary that doesn't end with anything.
Exactly. And it's it's obviously like that. The meme, it's like unsolved murders, and at the end of it, you're like, what? And what happened? And you're like, obviously,
they're like, it's still unsolved. I'm like, this didn't add anything.
No.
So true. some stuff that we have sort of touched on a little bit is the creator economy. And I know that if you're online at all, you've probably heard the words creator economy 6 million times. And I would love if you guys have any hot takes or really just what's being left out of the conversation when we talk about creator economy that you guys think.
I feel like I don't know, maybe it's just, again, not discussion that I've seen, but I feel like there's not much discussion about, I guess, the kind of next stages of going from being just like a solo creator to then kind of amping that up to a full kind of brand and a media brand, which for me would kind of be the natural path, you know. So it's, what is that content creator? Sure, they have a platform maybe like Substack, etc., but then what is that going to look like in 5-10 years? Obviously the platform will be different, but are they going to have kind of extra people on helping them produce more content? Like, are they going to have the capacity to kind of like fill the demand of what their people want to hear? I think it'd be interesting if there's some kind of like some sort of platform that kind of you could go from one creator doing it to then kind of getting the whole thing in, apart from like YouTube or something like that, but just something a bit newer.
So I saw an article that one of my friends, Hugo, wrote. He was the head of creator programs at Jelly Smack. And I think he was the first one that kind of wrote or put pen to paper on this with any sort of length, which was for the creator economy, you know, and you're starting to see VC dollars retreat from the creator economy. The scale doesn't really make sense for a lot of VCs anymore. The economics don't make sense for VCs. But the question becomes, like, does it just become the music industry where like the top 1% accrue 99% of the benefits? And I don't think that that's the case. I think we're actually going to have a lot more micro influencers, but the untold story or the unexamined story there is like, is micro influencing a sustainable lifestyle? Could you live off of just micro influencing, or is that just a side hustle? And then more importantly, if it is sustainable, what does that mean for typical retail jobs? And so we're re-engineering the economy to be very services based. If the creator economy succeeds, what happens to like the 20, 30 an hour job? And does everything just get more expensive because people are just making money on the internet? So that's something that I haven't really seen anybody delve into. But it will be interesting to see if like there's a longer tail that's actually sustainable to be a creator.
Yeah, it kind of feels like we're just reinventing freelancing, like the creator economy. Like
Yeah.
every time I see things, it feels like we're just reinventing freelancers. Like these people just don't get health insurance and they just
So, somebody's going to nail me for this, but it's kind of like how Clubhouse reinvented day radio and called it a tech company, but that's neither here nor there. Anywho.
Anything you want to add, Campbell?
Not really. I think my big pushback is what I talked about earlier with just not having the institutional support to back up the journalism that's being done. And I think that gets, something to add, I guess, is that gets even more concerning when you have journalists leaving these big brands reporting politics or economics news, charging subscriptions, because then you need to no one's going to pay for $200-$300 a year subscription unless it's like kind of stoking your ego or stoking your own emotions, which kind of just pushes people further down the polarization side. So yeah.
Cool. What do you, I guess in that same vein, what do you guys think are the biggest hurdles for new media companies and the biggest hurdles for legacy media companies right now?
Sarah, I'd love your thought on this, given your experience in the travel industry. I think you'd have an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I think, for new media companies, I know from kind of personal experience with ourselves, it was kind of getting that trust factor, as we kind of mentioned before, like the media institutions have that, like you said, like you don't want Antarctic virus from the Wall Street Journal because you have this in your head that they're a respected kind of go-to source. And for new media companies, I feel like that might be a little bit of a hurdle, is getting that kind of level of respect, as well as, of course, obviously the audience itself. And then, as we said, like, not just relying on SEO, but getting kind of people to come to it and engage directly. I think for legacy media companies, it's probably kind of maybe just trying to stay relevant with kind of new platforms and seeing which ones are actually worth kind of putting their eggs into and assigning members of the team. And I think they should probably also not be wary of, but maybe just kind of be mindful. And I think, as a side note, Morning Brew does this really well. It's about kind of scouting new talent and then building new building new kind of content pillars around that. So I think that could really add a new lease of life to a lot of kind of old school companies.
Yeah, I think
nothing to add. Sarah covered me, so
Okay. You're welcome.
I was just gonna say new media companies, I think, like, I'll keep it simple. They should stay focused. You got to like find your lane and master it. And that's sort of why I believe that any new media company, and I'm talking about publishing media more, really should start with a newsletter. It's like the best way to find your lane, to master it, to grow your audience, and you can expand from there. I think legacy media companies need to stay agile. Reader habits right now are changing like on a daily basis. Like, look what just happened to Twitter and how that disrupted how people are getting their news. So it's like you need to know your readers, anticipate their habits, and be constantly tracking that so that you can pivot and be agile to keep them engaged.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, how do you guys navigate rapidly changing social media? Like specifically Twitter. Are you guys staying on Twitter?
Honestly, I think you just can't rely on them. Like, I don't think, we saw this with some media companies that I won't name names, but like, you don't want to build a business model around social media companies because they ebb and they flow and they change, and it's really great incremental revenue when it's working, but it's not going to be reliable or dependable revenue. Morning Brew's Jacob Donnelly writes a great newsletter called A Media Operator that people should check out. But he had, I think it was last week, he did an article about basically like, don't rely on social media companies.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I know, like, the kind of company that I was working with in Ireland, it was at the kind of peak BuzzFeed-esque clickbait kind of type articles, and we relied a lot of that a lot of our traffic from Facebook. And I remember they made like one change to the algorithm, and literally like 50% of our traffic just went, and it was absolute panic stations. Like, it was so chaotic. But it was kind of like a blessing in disguise, because then we really realized what we had to work on. And then when I went on to kind of look at what I kind of wanted for how to grow Big 7, it was again with the mindset that all these platforms are so temporary. And yeah, I don't want to rely on any of them for bringing in any sort of kind of revenue or extreme levels of audience growth. Like, personally, like I'm a big Twitter fan. Like, I really, really do enjoy it. Bit of a lurker, but like, I do really like it. So with kind of Elon Musk changes, I mean, it's really hard to know, I think, what lasting changes are going to come about. So I haven't really been too fussed. I've just been kind of sitting back and waiting to see. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a social media platform. Like, I survived without it. I'll definitely be okay without it again. So outside of like a kind of industry and work thought level, I don't really care what happens to it, I don't think.
Yeah, so I guess I'll be the odd man out here. So I actually bought the blue check mark. I'm staying on Twitter. Most of that, though, is a result of the industry that I'm with. Artificial intelligence is taking a large chunk out of the media pie right now, but that's where a lot of like the developers, that's where a lot of the researchers all share their knowledge. And unfortunately, it's also where a lot of the VCs also sit. And so like you engage in meaningful conversations there. I've had leads for business come out of that, way more so than I have on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is now inundated with a whole bunch of just random things about, hey, let's connect for 5 minutes and sell you a product. So I feel like Twitter has been the most actual engagement that I've been able to have that's useful with people that I don't know. Instagram and Facebook, for the most part, have been a little bit more trolly, but we actually have our Facebook community there. But for Twitter, I found it to be incredibly useful for just researching things and getting information that I need still, even if the big brands aren't on there. But the funny part is I never really understood why people were following brands on Twitter anyway, to be quite frank. I figured brands lived on LinkedIn. And so like the brand retweeting, I think, has actually made it easier for engaging conversation. Now, is it always the most helpful? Meh. But I'm planning to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm going down with the ship. I've had Twitter since high school. I'm not deleting that. Okay, cool. So, Brennan, I would love to know if AI is going to take my job.
So the short answer is no. And that's definitely not what we're endeavoring to do at GoCharlie's. So let me be clear on that. Like I got into this business to make super impactful products that help people make their lives better. For us specifically, we're creating highly engaging marketing content that's customized to you so that you can grow your brand or so that you can make the business of your dreams sustainable. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of affording people those opportunities without them having to learn marketing in a long-term space. Now, where I do think AI is going to take jobs is people that don't actually want to do the work. And what I mean by that is there's some people that come to our platform, they just want the AI to do everything for them. And so those people likely will be replaced. But I think that AI is actually a fundamental opportunity for people to enhance their own creative abilities. I would question everybody on this call, how many things have you wanted to do creatively that you haven't done because you couldn't get over that initial hump? But what if AI was that getting you over the hump, that 10 to 30% to kick you into gear, and now you become a creative person? You take your creative abilities and turn that into a reality. And so that, I think, is going to be the fundamental value of artificial intelligence in the media space. And I would say that I think there's going to be a creative renaissance because of it. AI is going to allow you to take your own personal creativity to a place never before fathomed. And so I think that's going to be really interesting to see it evolve into the media space. But in short, Maddie, no, AI is not here to take your job as long as I'm on.
Thank you, Brennan. Campbell, Sarah, anything that you'd like to add before we open up to a Q&A from the audience?
I think, yeah, I loved Brennan's kind of take on that. I thought that was really interesting and definitely, hopefully dead on. But I think, yeah, I haven't used GoCharlie yet, but I will. It's on my list. But I've used for work copy.ai, and I did find it very helpful to kind of just get more mundane content tasks started. Like for, if you have to write, say, like 50 very similar descriptions for a supplier or something like that, it would kill me to have to write that manually myself. It would, trying to say the same thing 50 times but different is my idea of hell. So I used a tool like that and I found it so helpful. I flew through it and then I just edited it. So already that's kind of become part now of my not my daily work, but at least some of it that I'll definitely be amping up as more tools come out.
Yeah, no,
I'm excited.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, I think the output's only going to be as good as the input. So I think AI is going to help free up human capital we can now deploy our human capital in better ways. And I think it's going to make us better. It's not going to replace us.
Cool. All right. So now we're going to open up to the question portion. I know there's some questions in the chat. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, because I know if you're sick of my voice, just raise your hand and I'll try to do my best and we can unmute you. But I'll start with one question in the chat from Tom Whitelock. Question for Brennan. How do you see AI's role in helping separate out major news outlets, in parentheses, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, et cetera, from the clickbait headlines you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't think the clickbait stuff is going away. I think the AI is going to get really good at creating very clickbaity type titles because unfortunately, that's what we respond to. The more engagement data that gets plugged into these things, the better they're going to get at creating those things where you're like, I want to know just a little bit more about why Reese Witherspoon did Sweet Home Alabama. You click into that for some reason.
I always want to know that. I always
do too. I don't know why. But what's intriguing is these AIs will create information that is sometimes incorrect. And so that's one of the big issues in the industry right now is how do you make sure that the AI is factually correct? In Galactica, a Meta's model that was based in scientific research still couldn't get it right without the AI model going incorrectly. But in the next couple of years, I think you're going to see the technology come to the flip side where the AI, and you're starting to see this with Elon Musk, the AI can actually do the fact checking on what's being reported. And so you'll see the AI that created the same misinformation will actually have another AI that's grading it and making sure that it's factually based. So I think that's where you're going to see this transition, Tom, is the AI is actually going to come to the good side and make sure that everything is factually correct, rather than just like these clickbaity headlines.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. This one's from, sorry if I mispronounced your name, Liddy Neal. Curious how brands, companies play into the future of media. It's getting harder and harder to pitch media outlets with less outlets, particularly the larger institutions willing to accept opinion editorials. So many companies /leaders /CEOs have to rely on Medium, Substack, company branded websites. Does the answer rely on Campbell's perspective on fragmented niche media and fostering those relationships more deeply than mainstream news?
Yeah, I can jump in there. I think as media fractures and becomes more niche, part of that is this loyalty that audiences have to the creators or the writers or the brands producing that media. And it opens up a lot more doors for effective branded content and thought leadership opportunities for brands to drop into these more niche channels and get in front of audiences that are more intentionally aligned with the brand that is producing the news. So I've seen a lot of like these smaller like media business creators that I follow that have newsletters and podcasts, for instance, do sponsored podcasts where like you wouldn't even know if it's sponsored if they didn't say it, and you trust the creator so much that you trust that like the brand messaging that's coming through and from the sponsor is actually like authentic and the conversation's authentic. So that I think as like media continues to fragment, get more niche, and be more like industry specific, there's opportunities for better, more integrated brand content, like thought leadership exercise. So I don't know if that totally answers the question, but that's one thought I have on it.
Cool. Kyle, I see your hand raised. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, I would love to. This has been a great conversation. Thank you all for the insights. I think the media industry right now, like we're looking at 2023 and we're thinking that advertising dollars are going to dry up, or it's going to be harder to get advertising dollars. Marketing budgets are going to shrink. I think Elizabeth talked about this in the chat as well. How would you advise companies to think about ad-based models versus subscription-based models and going maybe directly to consumers rather than to advertisers? Do you think one approach is better than the other, or in what context is one better than the other?
It's like the $1 million question, Kyle. So.
Yeah, it's just silence. I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I think the effectiveness of ads generally is going to continue to go down in the short run. But where I think things are going to get more interesting is when content can be dynamically changed based upon who's actually viewing it, which honestly AI will enable in probably 2 to 5 years, if I had to imagine. But I think ads in general, like as a misnomer, are like people can see them coming from a mile away now. And so no one really wants to click on the ad. So I would say that the subscription model is the better acquisition channel. Produce good content, produce good products, people talk about you. I think in an age of declining effectiveness of ads, product-led growth and quality content wins. So I'd say the subscription model.
I think it's just all about having like a diverse revenue streams. Successful media companies aren't just all ads or all subscription. They're generally those two plus other revenue streams. And I think it's important to have more of like a horizontal revenue stream approach. And as we see these ebbs and flows in the market, there's ways to make up if ad revenue falls.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point by Campbell. Definitely kind of diversifying the revenue streams, especially during COVID and the pandemic. Advertising just went off a cliff. Like I know for Big 7, our programmatic advertising was one of our biggest revenue like sources. And then with COVID, it just totally flopped, and it was so hard to know when that might go back up again. And that's when we really kind of looked at diversifying and adding extra things in. And that's almost kind of, I guess, moving away from our traditional kind of niche as a travel media brand, and that we now kind of offer car rental and hotel comparison platforms, that we've added more of a, I guess, online travel agent aspect to the site. But yeah, it's kind of trying to keep everything all balanced-ish and not being overly reliant on any one thing, especially advertising, because it's just so volatile.
Yeah, Sarah, how did you scale a travel media company during a pandemic? That seems insane.
We didn't actually scale it per se during the pandemic, but we survived. And I think that's, for me, just as satisfying. So we were very lucky that we got acquired in November 2020, as I mentioned, by a UK travel company. And that really kind of gave us the funding and the extra support to grow those areas that I mentioned before, like the hotels and the car platform, into more reliable and profitable revenue schemes than what we would have been able to achieve with just our kind of own team focusing purely on kind of digital partnerships and ads. So yeah, it was lucky that we were kind of able to join forces with another company, and kind of make both of them better by doing that. But yeah, the pandemic was not a fun time, and I'm so happy that it's over. Over in terms of work anyway. So
cool. It looks like Elizabeth, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to expand on the advertising piece. So that if you diversifying makes sense, but like, where is that? So where should you be placing your advertising dollars right now? Is it back to TV? Is it sponsoring podcasts? Is it outdoor? Is it mailers? Like, in terms of when you're thinking of diversifying, like, what is that?
First of all, I love that you're getting a work in, Elizabeth. That rocks.
Yeah.
We love. Anyway, sorry.
I had to go back
Continue.
to the walk so I could talk, but yeah, I was running earlier.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I was talking about diversifying revenue streams from like a media brand perspective. So like ensuring that media companies can survive if ads drop down. I don't know if I have a good answer for you on how brands should reallocate their marketing spend. Yeah,
I wish I could be more helpful, but I think it's kind of hard to know. I think because it is a little bit kind of trickier, it really does depend on the individual brand and the company in terms of how to diversify it, because there's so many kind of routes that you could go down. But in general, I guess it would just be to kind of make sure that you do have as many streams as possible, and you kind of have some coming up as well that you're trying to nurture, and make sure that you're not putting too much focus into one.
Yeah.
Kind of a generic answer. Sorry.
Yeah, I think for the diversification question, maybe this gets into marketing more than media per se, but I think for us, we follow kind of the bullseye method in Traction, which is Traction is a book, by the way, which is kind of identifying all the channels you could possibly look at, doing experiments, identifying the channels that work the best, and then finding the one channel that works the best and farm that out. And that's kind of your bullseye. And then you come back out, identify the second best channel, farm that out, and then keep going around the circle. But it's all based off of who your target customer is. You know, if your target demographic's older, maybe you're going TV-based ads. If your target demographic is younger, you're probably going TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat, and maybe using influencers as your marketing channel. So I think it's a matter of like, what's your customer profile, and then backing that into where you should put your ad dollars and where you're seeing effectiveness in terms of conversion.
Cool. Kristen, I see you have a hand raised.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Maddie and everybody. And Anna, Kyle, awesome. I love the Marketing Brew alumni stuff. You guys are amazing. So I had a lot of questions because my brain goes many miles a minute. But one thing I keep hearing is like these reoccurring elements of trust, authenticity, veracity. And when you're an influencer, this is like an opinion based. Now, you may have some journalistic integrity or some credentials or some sort of affiliation with, like you said, behind the scenes, where are you coming from with this opinion? Legacy media groups usually have to register with the federal, the FCC here in the US, and they are beholden, they could be sued for whether or not they put something on the air that is, they knew at the time was factual or not factual. So how do you guys recommend in this new digital platform dealing with that difference between what is opinion and expert freelancing, consultation, and veracity of fact and journalistic integrity?
Do you mean as like a consumer? Like,
yeah, in the new digital platform, so maybe the consumers don't see it, right? Like if you turn on your TV and you go to YouTube, or you go to a news channel, or you go something, maybe they're consuming media in a way where they don't realize that some are beholden to other journalistic or other places of fact checking than others. Maybe this gets into the B2B media, like you're having a third party that's, trusted. It's a difficult question. I'll go back on mute if I just.
How do we? Yeah, you're like, how do we make sure that people know things are true?
It's the difference between opinion and news, right? Which I think digital media has not necessarily answered yet.
I don't know that it ever will. I think there's a personal level of accountability that people have to take for the information they consume and fact checking it. But I do think that as a whole, the media industry should endeavor to be trustworthy and provide fact-based content. But I think the nature of the beast is that marketing was never meant to be fact-based. And so marketing is a very big part of media. Marketing is selling you on an idea of what a product may or may not give you, or what a service may or may not give you. So inherently, it is subjective. And so I think, that's where I was mentioning news versus media earlier, is like news to me should be objective. It should be fact-based. It should be relatively free of bias, but, different publications are going to come up with different things. But I don't think digital media will ever completely answer the authenticity and veracity of fact checking, just because the nature of the media industry itself.
It's a paradox. Love it.
Yeah. My information diet is kind of in two lanes. It's like the content that I seek out to be better at my job, like more B2B content, I generally go to like creators for that. So it's folks that are expert in those industries that have now started newsletters and podcasts to talk about that industry that I trust, and I have a connection to their personality, and it's more of a personal connection. It's that niche media. When I'm looking for like news, like capital news to stay up to date and informed, like I don't get that from creators or TikTok influencers or Instagram influencers. There's certain brands that I trust, and I'll stop there.
Well, right. So those certain brands could be those legacy news organizations, or the people that evolved or were emergent after that, and how they all play. Anyway, yes, I love that. I just also worry about buyer beware and putting the burden on the viewer solely. I think everybody has to come halfway, right? And yes, take responsibility, but also, like you said, if you're in the media space, what is good faith in your box of marketing, truth, opinion, consultation, so on and so forth. Thank you guys. That was awesome. I love this.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you. That was a good question. And since it is, I guess I'm on Central Time. So since it's 11:12:47, that'll probably be our last question. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your questions, but I want to make sure everybody gets back to their jobs, and no one gets in trouble for being here. But this was great. Thank you. Thank you, Campbell. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Brennan. Thank you, Anna and Kyle, for organizing this. Thank you, Learning at Morning Brew. Thank you, everyone who reads the daily newsletter just from me. So I have a job. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.